So, with this being a roguelite deck builder, like, this is obviously not the first roguelite deck builder. There's a lot of roguelike deck builders. It's one of the more popular roguelike categories right now. What are you guys do? Okay, what is like the core system? And then how are you guys trying to do something different? Like, how does the deck building work? How does moving around the zones work? Like, what sort of system do you have to go between different encounters? And yeah, just generally, like, if you're in a run, what are you doing?
So more or less, with us, well, I'll start from the high level. Most, well, a lot of games, when you kill an enemy, they're simply out of the fight. And taking inspiration from Darkest Dungeons, I decided to design in a slightly different route. So when you defeat the enemies, their bodies still remain on the field. Now,
Okay.
this allows players opportunity to continue attacking these foes if they wish so. The more damage you deal to an enemy, the more the body breaks down, and that changes the types of rewards you get. So if you reduce an enemy's HP exactly to zero, you get some pretty neat cards, more powerful versions, cards that have special properties, modifiers that have been attached to them. But if you decide to go overboard and deal excessive damage, you get more scrap or money, and you also get more broken down cards that are filled with the viruses. So it becomes a choice of the player to decide, do I want a lot of money or do I want more powerful cards? And that comes at a crossroads of choice. It's very much a choice that the player can actively choose to make to determine how they want to approach the run. Because there are a couple different layers to this. There's, as I said, the two types of decks. We've got the behavior cards, which relate to the pilots and their emotions, and we've got the directive cards, which relate to the robot. In combat, really, you can only use the directive cards, but out of combat, you can affix the human cards to the robot cards to change how moves work. So we've got our basic attack, which is called Leap, and that does 6 damage. If we add a card that says a card for our first character, the hotshot that says insult, it becomes deal 6 damage and add 2 weak to the enemy. Whereas if we add something called brave, it becomes hit, deal 6 damage to all enemies. Now the complexity builds from here, in the fact that you are given the choice to mix and match between these cards. So rather than being offered at the end of a fight a simple choice of 3 cards, you're really given the choice of what you need next. So you're given a choice of either the behavior cards or the directive cards that are unfused. You go out and then you can fuse them afterwards, and each combination leads to a unique type of card. So from here, players get a lot of choice. They can build cards as they like. The next stage of that is where inevitably you'll pick up duplicate cards. At certain points on the map, you'll be able to fuse or refine duplicate cards into a more powerful version of the card. So a lot of the game becomes a choice of, when do I combine my cards? When do I refine my cards? What do I want? And then additionally, with this, each encounter has a little bit of story. We've got narrative, which is told from the AI, the management AI's perspective. But then there's also text. Sometimes it's garbled, sometimes it's different. That is being spoken to the player by the kind of corrupted rogue robots. And the more viruses you collect, this is a feature that we hope to add. We'll see how things go. The text will slowly unravel and give you a different type of story. And with our map navigation, we've chosen for a more free approach, where you're giving basically a set of map tiles where you can freely navigate around, exploring from tile to tile, which means that you can spend as long as you want in a single act, or as short as you want. You can simply rush to the boss. The longer you spend, obviously, the more resources you gather, but also the more harder enemies pop up. As
Right, I
we
was going
have
to
a
ask if there
somewhat
was
of
any
a
drawback to sticking around. Because otherwise, like
Yeah.
there would like be no reason not to just grind out each act and just be like really powerful for the next one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if
Do you
you
want to
might
talk
have
about that?
played Risk of Rain at all, potentially.
I
But
played
it's a
it
really good
years
analog.
ago. I haven't played Risk of Rain
Oh,
2, but
okay.
I did play the original one.
Oh, Risk of Rain, yeah, Risk of Rain 2, great. So like the kind of like sense of okay, as time is going on, everything's getting that little bit harder, and it's the part of the balancing act for the game is really that like tension of okay, am I like geared up enough to go to the next place yet? Or am I hanging around too long? What am I doing? Am I just sitting here farming? Oh, that's going to make my life so much harder.
Right.
So yeah, letting players kind of pick that strategic midline and see what suits them is kind of a bit of a bit of what we're hoping to go down for that over map screen. And we've kind of got a bit of a threat system that like the more stuff you're doing in the world, the more kind of things are starting to notice you and come online and wanting to deal with you. And that kind of, yeah, plays into a bunch of the narrative aspect of the game then as well.
So with the system of it getting harder, is this based on like actual time, or is it based on the number of tiles you go across?
It's based on a couple of different factors, and we've got like tuning parameters for all the little ways. So like whether or not you choose to defeat your enemies, whether you go into the kind of like have a chat with the merchant and buy some stuff from him. All like there's a bunch of little factors that are all there contributing their own little bits and pieces to this like threat score system that's going on in the background to kind of see, okay, cool, where are we putting you at the moment in terms of like how much everything is like kind of coming at you.
Is the player going to have any indication of like the current threat level, or is that just something entirely happening in the background?
We want to give them an indication of the overall threat level. Currently, we're open to workshopping this and getting feedback from people, but we want to kind of stay away from like any single like like it being distilled down to some like single number that people just go, oh, my threat level is currently this
Right.
exact thing to the decimal
Right.
point
This
or
is your
something.
this is your star level in GTA.
Yeah, it's meant to be kind of like the maybe like low, medium, high, catastrophic. Like really, yeah. If I was going to pick between that or the risk of like range system, like that kind of like sense of like oh like a very qualitative description of what's going on would be cool. So like cruisy like undetected or up to hell has broken loose,
Right.
like that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we want to give players enough information to make meaningful choices. Everything is about what the player wants to do and how they want to approach things.
So they can balance like whether they think it makes sense to keep going, or okay, I know I'm not going to survive going up to the next tier. Like I need to get out of here now.
Yeah,
Or
basically. Yeah. Or I have them get to like kind of potentially plan ahead a little bit and start to think about, oh, if I am going to go and cause a bunch of noise, then is that going to make my life harder? Am I geared right for doing that? Yeah, all those kind of little trade-offs. Yeah, just kind of it's one of those ones where we're also saying meaningful choice, but we're retaining a little bit of ambiguity just to make it so that if you have all the information, it actually takes away from your meaningful choice because you can kind of plan a very optimized, like, okay, this is it. This is the exact thing. And in some circumstances, that's cool. But if it's like every single time, there's just like a single answer for whatever it is, and you don't have to make some kind of meaningful decision about what you're doing next, then it can kind of take away from that spirit a bit. So really making it so that your intuition as a player and your choice of strategy is going to be the thing that gets you through is one of the aims.
So across the nodes that you've already cleared out, so you've like beat enemies here. Okay, question one is, can you go back across those nodes? And question two is, if you can, are those nodes safe going back across, or may something happen if you go back to a previous one?
So the idea is that when you traverse through nodes you've already been through, they're typically safe.
Typically.
However, our elites, the really hard enemies, we want them to roam around the map. And the longer you spend on the map, the more of them that appear, and the faster they move towards you. So, yes, the towers are safe. TM. They're safe until they're not safe anymore.
Okay.
But players will have a very easy indicator to say, okay, this is now a hotspot. I need to avoid this, or, I could lose.
Okay. So the reason I asked that is because if you're like if the threat system had gotten too high and you're like, okay, I need to like rush to where the exit was, like you cleared out a path to the exit to the next act. Assuming there was no elites along that path, you could just zoom back up along that path and get to the end.
Yeah. More or less.
Yeah, assuming nothing jumps in the way
Right,
as you're
right.
doing that. Yeah, there are a variety of things that might be able to happen there, and that's one of the things that we don't want to put all the cards on the table necessarily. But yeah, like things might. The world doesn't necessarily stay the same while you're just pottering around doing whatever you want to do.
It's safer, but not guaranteed to be safe.
Yeah.